Senator Ketter.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Acting Deputy President. And I rise to speak in relation to Senator Steele-John's Private Members Bill, Commonwealth Electoral Amendment, lowering voting age and increasing voter participation Bill 2018. And at the heart of this bill is a really important issue, participation in democracy that is Australia's electoral system. And I'm grateful to Senator Steele-John for allowing me this opportunity to talk about the issue. Given the confusion that surrounded the views in terms of Senator Farrell's contribution, I want to make it very clear from the outset that the Labor position in respect of this bill is that we believe the appropriate course for it to be progressed is for it to be referred to the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters, committee which you very ably chair, Madam Acting Deputy President. And that committee has done some very good work in recent times. It has addressed some of the topical issues of the day, the issues of foreign donations and Section 44 of the Constitution. A lot of Australians may not be aware that particular committee operates in a very collaborative way most of the time. There are only very rarely sort of partisan issues that are dealt with. And in fact, there are very often bipartisan views on some very unexpected matters. So it is a well-functioning committee. It's a long-standing committee, and I think that that is the committee that will do proper justice to this particular issue, because it is one that does deserve additional consideration. Senator Steele-John might be aware that, in fact, the sorts of issues that he raises in this bill were taken by Labor to the last federal election. So we were a bit disappointed to see that this bill sitting on the notice paper from Monday to Thursday, only allowing us a very short period of time to debate the merits of the bill. And I do want to reiterate the point that I think this is a bill that should receive the appropriate scrutiny. Now, it's our view that these issues should be properly considered by the committee, and when it comes to the Labor Party's position on this issue historically, we have had a very proud track record of advocating for the extension of the electoral franchise. And let's not forget, it was Labor in the Labor government in 2012 who introduced the automatic enrolment provisions, extending the right to vote to thousands of disenfranchised voters across the country. And prior to the last election, the Labor Party announced a broad strategy to engage young Australians in the political system and to empower them to drive and to guide change. And I think there are a couple of excerpts from those announcements that are worth citing. Firstly, that the research by the Whitlam Institute had shown that young people want to be involved in decision-making processes and should be offered opportunities to do so within existing political structures. And I'll come back to that issue later on. Also, we've highlighted the fact that encouraging their participation will encourage greater transparency and engagement, inspire short-term issues-based or community-centred action to improve longer-term decision-making processes, and value and acknowledge the contribution of young people through a process of accountability back to those young people. Now, we do know that young people are active participants in public life and active contributors, amongst other things, to the taxation system. And according to the Australian Census and Taxation Statistics figures, in 2012-13, over 17,000 Australians aged under 18 paid over $41 million in income tax alone. And this does not take into account indirect taxes paid by young Australians, for example, the GST. So our policy announcement also made reference to the fact that 16 and 17-year-olds are already permitted to engage in a range of adult activities. These have been canvassed previously. Military service applies from 16 years, 6 months, and service can commence at the age of 17. Driver's licence applies between 16 years and 6 months and 17, 18 in the case of Victoria. A pilot licence, 16 for balloons and gliders and 17 for other aircraft. A firearms licence at 14 years. There is some variation across the states and territories there. And making independent decisions about medical matters and the decision to leave home applies at the age 16. So, as we said back then, if 16 and 17-year-olds can be trusted to join the military and drive on our roads and live independently, they should also be trusted to directly participate in our representative democracy by having their say at the ballot box. And we also said that directly involving 16 and 17-year-olds in our democracy is an opportunity to engage young people in an important conversation about civic responsibility, community values and expectations, and to help them become productive members of society. So we believe that we owe it to all those 16 and 17-year-olds who work, pay tax, earn penalty rates, drive on our roads and use public services to give respectful consideration to this proposal, and we're happy to keep having that conversation. Just while I'm talking about some of these, what some might consider to be anomalies, let's not forget that when you're at 18 years of age, there are, under many of our industrial awards that apply, there are many Australians, for example in the retail industry and others, where you're 18 and for all intents and purposes you're an adult under our system, you're getting 70% of the rate of pay of a 21-year-old. So there are some issues that do need to be addressed. There are some anomalies that, and so I think a lot of young people would want to see those types of issues being addressed. Thankfully, there is an industrial campaign by the Shop Distributor and Allied Employees Association to address that. And if anybody would like more information about that, they can visit 100percentpay.com.au. And as I say, the engagement of young people in the system enables those types of issues to be addressed. So young people can get involved in that campaign. Join the SDA is another opportunity for people to show their support for that important initiative, because of the work of the SDA in the retail award, 20-year-olds now have the benefit of the 100% rate of pay. So we believe that there are a number of issues that could be canvassed for lowering the voting age, and we undertook at the last election to consult when in government with community leaders and young people across the country prior to recommending a change in the legislative provision. So in that sense we are being consistent. We believe that there is an important need for consultation and for stakeholders to be involved in this decision. And it's our belief that this issue should be afforded appropriate attention, and therefore it's not adequate to simply debate legislation without a considered review process. So for that reason we're not in a position to support it at this point, but as I say, we think it should be carefully considered by the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters. When thinking about the current bill, there's a number of issues that we have, which time doesn't permit me to go into, but there were some issues that I would have liked to have raised about the voluntary nature that's being proposed under this bill for voting under the age of 18. I think that does have the potential to cause some confusion. I think the compulsory voting system that we have in this country is a very worthwhile one. It is led to overwhelming engagement in the voting process, and I would be personally concerned if there was any steps to diminish that, and I'm not suggesting that Senator Steele-John has that as a motivation behind this, but I do think it really is important that we maintain that compulsory voting system. I also had some concerns about the rock-up and enrol provision, and time doesn't permit me to speak further on that. I would have loved to have talked, Madam Acting Deputy President, about, I think, the corresponding need for civics and citizenship education to be part of any conversation about changing the voting age, and I would ask that the Senate that it support the referral of the bill to the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters so that it receives the appropriate analysis. We'd especially like to see the principles of engaging young people in the electoral system considered in conjunction with the work done in the inquiry into electoral education, an inquiry that that I'm very concerned about.
Thank you, Senator Ketter.